You ready to let folks in from the waiting room?
You're gonna do introductions and stuff before, but yeah, I'll just
I'll
follow your lead, Benji. I
Yeah,
will follow your lead.
Okay, I'm gonna let him
And
in and
do I
put
have
myself on mute.
capability to share before?
Yes, let me make sure. Let's see, hang on. All right, Nguyen, you should be a co-host, which will allow you to share and use the capabilities. Hi, friends. We're just getting set up. We'll get going in just a moment.
Dan with the tie for the win.
The loss, maybe. Yeah.
Tracy, it's nice to have you.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
For those of you that don't know Tracy, she's the principal at Horizonte in Salt Lake and supports Wendy with their YIC program. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and start. There may be more that join us, but I do want to respect your time and appreciate those of you that were here on time. And so I'm going to introduce Kuhn to you, who works at USBE, and specifically as a specialist there. One of his responsibilities is restorative practices. And as we surveyed directors for our October in-person directors meeting, restorative practices was an item that came up and we didn't have room for it on the agenda there. And so we thought we would do it on our webinar. So we have Kuhn with us today. That is, has about a 30-minute presentation on an overview of restorative practices. And then the rest of the time will be up for people that have questions on maybe specifically how that would work in your setting, or if you've got a specific situation that you want to bring up. This is a time that not only Kuhn, but others we can collaborate together and just use the collective wisdom that we have on this call right now. So thanks, everyone. And Kuhn, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Benji, and good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Good. Thank you for the opportunity for me to share with you the concept of restorative practice. I've been here about 3.5 years. I used to work in with the Commission on Criminal and Juvenile Justice, overseeing juvenile justice, and you may have heard of the juvenile justice reform. Part of that work was to keep some of the students' behavior at the school level, and using various approach to address the school-based behavior, including mobile crisis outreach team, youth court, and one of that is restorative justice programming. And then that's part of giving USBE a framework to work with that. And so I move over to USBE and share this concept with school district-wise and all of that. One element I was gonna share with you, have you heard in the most recent report, USBE report on school discipline issues on incidents and law enforcement action report? Have you? If not, is available online, and you can see I was gonna transfer and share that with you. It's just not quite working, but I just gonna give you a couple of highlights where the most recent 2023 report, right? Since the trend has gone up, the most recent report is that 6.5% of the students in the school area has some kind with the incident-related report. So that's an increase from 5.7 from last year, and then 3.3 from the year before, 2021. But that may impact because of the lower 3.3 because of the pandemic. And as this is, if you're talking about the rate, 6.5%, we're talking about 46,000 students count that involved with incident reporting. But if you, that's like student body. But if you're talking about just the incident count itself, that's 80,000 in the last school year in terms of the number. In the previous year, if we're talking about 5.7%, the rate of incident related for all the student body, then we're talking about there are 41,000 students were been reported involved with an incident report as school related, right? And then that's the student body count. But if you're talking about just the incident alone, because some student may have more than one, the report is 77,000. So the trend has gone up in that. So the question is that, are there a way to work with and addressing this issue? So I'm not here to tell you that I have all the solution. I'm telling you that restore practice in the school can possibly an options for you to work with that. So that's what I will be sharing with you, just the work concept here. So my content share is from the International Institute for Restore Practice. And the group have shared this with can you see that okay? I have to adjust a little bit so that I will not be able to see you now because I don't have the screen, but hopefully you can see, not hopefully, but Amanda, can you confirm you can see the screen with the PowerPoint sharing?
Yeah, so we've got the Board of Ed Restorative Practices, Building a Culture of Change.
Yep, thank you. And I'm not seeing anyone, so if you want a whole conversation, I would leave it to Amanda just to jump right in and interrupt me if there are questions or things, because I can't see everybody. Thank you. So with this practice, the overall objective of Restore Practice is to increase, just to share with when I present this to educators or building leaders, is to increase the fundamental principle of Restore Practice, increase the awareness of social discipline window, where we usually are and where do we want to be in general. Increase and understand of continuum of Restore Practice. You may have heard this in the community practice. So let's get in the circle. Restorative circle is one of the component, but it's not all. There are other elements that make up, and that is becoming a continuum of restore practice. And then increase the restore practice principle. The goal is to be aware and use this concept on the regular basis on the daily interaction with youth. So as you go, and keep in mind that as a note to restore practice, the principle here is to work with the faculty and staff. And what we're talking about is the mind shift of thinking and how building that practice, building that helps the relationship and preparing and that keeping that relationship. Maximize the time that students are in school and learning, and you work with that student and say, you are at the building now. You and I are working together. How can we keep that healthy relationship, building that strong relationship? Again, reminding us is not so much about the everyday interaction, but be mindful that our mind shift change, because we have kind of that routine, if you will, an automatic mindset that we jump into. When we see a behavior, we go into that mode. What we want to do is say, okay, wait a minute, take a step back, and then really evaluating before we move into that action. And then another one is to build that, the building culture. It's great to have a teacher to practice, restore practice within this classroom with the 4th or 5th grade students. It's even better if we can expand it to all 4th grade student within that building. But it's the greater impact if we can make it as a school building culture on restored practice. So we're looking at two different lens of managing student behavior rather than punishment, rather than the suspension, expulsion, detention, that punitive mindset. We wanted to focus on relationship building to our student. Give more time If we can do this correctly, it may take more work to begin with and get the concept down. But later on, when you have that good relationship with the students, it may give you a lot more time to work with the student rather than thinking about how to manage their behavior and then do the referral to the office or thinking about the disciplinary issues there. When restored practice apply, we believe it is significantly reducing the amount of time reporting and referring to by principal or whoever is in charge of the behavior issue at the school building. So the information is from International Institute for Restored Practice. The founders say that human beings are happier, more productive, and more likely to make positive change in their behavior when those in position of authority do things with them rather than for them or to them. And we will go more as we go into that. So there are 4 concepts. So I will briefly go with you. We'll spend a lot of time talking about relationship, building that sense of community. So when we in that relationship, is this research have shown, and you probably, I'm preaching to the choir here, that you have a positive relationship will improve student learning. We need good connection in creating relationship. And sometimes it's simple, foundational, but it is in the first step of relationship is that you actually have to create or develop that relationship, right? And then as you have that relationship, you actually have to maintain or sustain that relationship, and you have to work on that. And then at time, you actually do have to prepare that relationship. So that's just part of the process. Who are the people that we need to think about building relationship? And you know this. So first we talk about student to students, right? Student to teacher. And then at the building level, you have that relationship teacher to teacher. And believe it or not, our student can see and they can really observe on how teacher and teacher interact, and that they kind of know what's going on. So teacher to school administrator, teacher to parents. How about student to school administrator, right? And some of the what are the relationships in the buildings that we may not have thought of? So we'll spend time maybe thinking about the school secretary, the janitor, the school resource officer, the lunch personnel that work, right? And so they all can observe and see things that teacher may not see. So building that culture relationship is very important. And when you have that relationship, in a sense, you will create that community. And the community is, we come together today is a sense of community of learning, right? But when we come together and get to know each other, I had to work, and because we don't have time, but I get to know you. And then so that I make you feel that not just coming here because you have to, but you need to feel it belong to. And we are part of this group, part of the team that working on YIC students, right? Working with on my work is on the prevention, or at the building you had the 4th grade, 5th grade, all of that students in the 4th grade together, and then expand it to how are they feeling belong to. When I see the 5th grade and 6th grade student, how are they making me feel? Are they bullying me? Are they embracing me, making me feel part of it? So that's the sense of community, and we build that community because we have a relationship. So I'll spend on time again creating that relationship, maintaining that relationship, sustaining that relationship, and then attempt preparing that relationship. When you have the relationship, it's easier to work and keep folks be accountable. So that collaborative way of working there. When you have that student not following the ordinance and like wearing a hat to the building, say, hey, better. We talk about this before, right? Is shouldn't doing the wearing your hat. So just take it up, right? And so just kind of remind a quick tap on the back to our student, and they will be more likely embracing. I'm not saying that is the that approach like work for all. I'm just saying that this most likely it will work, right? So in a relationship, we spend time what is a healthy relationship and an appropriate relationship look like, feel like, and sounds like. And so in the training, we'll go more in detail about this, right? How it sounds like in a conversation at home, at the school versus at the school might be different, right? At home, sometimes we talk loud, but at the school, well, we keep our tone down so that everybody can hear and that it doesn't sound angry. It may be perceived as an angry voice, but to other, it just the culture at home, that's the way I do it, or the way I talk, right? How does it feel like? Do you feel connected? You feel part of? What is the boundary in that relationship, right? So in the training, we talk a lot about that. Part of the conversation in the training is that, do your student know that, right? So we had to be very explicit in terms of our expectation to students, and vice versa, allow for our student to speak to us about what is their experience, what's their culture, so that we know in both ways. And sometimes, again, sounds basic, but it's very important to create that relationship. So as part of the training concept, we spend a lot of time in talking about this. Any question on the relationship first part of the concept here? Okay. A second thing about restorative practice we're talking about and you go through is the social discipline window. What you see here is the one is on to the my left is the low to high on the control, limit setting, or discipline, or the y-axis there from low to high. Basically, if the easy way to say this is expectation, right? Setting expectation, low to high expectation. And then on the bottom, go to the right is the support, the encouragement, the nurturing, the caring that you give to our students. So when we put this together, right, what we have is called social discipline window, and then 4 of them. So what we have is the 2 or the punitive, when you have a high expectation but low support. When a student misbehave, a teacher have high expectations like, you didn't do that right, you misbehave, go to the corner, sit down, time out for you, right? Very responsive, reactive to the to the student behavior right away. When we have a teacher who or authority within that building or in that classroom, right, thinking, you know, is a classroom, you do your way. This is the content I teach, you learn however you want. So very low expectation for our student, and then low support, you know. This is homework, I teach you the math lesson, do your homework, done, right? So kind of very in transactional way of doing things. Or another way is when you have a high support, very loving, very caring for students, but low expectation. The student didn't turn in a hard. It's okay. You probably have a hard time at home or something happened, right? And so so very supportive, very understanding of the students, but very low expectation, right? What we are trying to aim here in terms of restore practice is to bring it to the width window. And the width window is when we have a high expectation for our student with a high support, that's when our students thrive, right? And so homework needs to be done, right? This classroom norm needs to be followed, not just by you, but like by everybody. How can I work with you to maintain and follow this home or get the homework done or follow the norm? So then that the mindset in terms of our work and everyday interactions, right? How easy it is for us to, as an authority figure, like with all the business and the first things like, I'm done dealing with you, go and have a timeout, right? To that punitive window. So through the training, we will go say how often the impact when we do the operate on a punitive window. What is that environment look like for the classroom setting, both for the authority figure and for the student who participate in that classroom? Or when we have the neglectful window, the not window, low support and low expectation, how is that classroom look like for the teacher or authority figure in the classroom and for the student who participating in that? And we go more detail, right? And but when we, and the same thing is for the permissive window or the restorative window. Maybe the easy way to look at this is that the top left, right? Very, I guess, military style, right? You didn't do a unit, drop down, do the 20 push-up, or that the bottom left there, where the student or I guess the dad, the guardian, just be on the computer or be on the phone, and then the kid is holding the teddy bear. So very neglectful. Just you do your thing, I do my thing, right? And then I share this at my training where, yeah, the high support but low expectation. And if you have kids, and sometimes you can see they are in control and in charge of the classroom or at your home. And I happen to be in this quite a bit, where at the end of the day, okay, you do whatever you want, and they can say, okay, let's not cook at home and go out and eat, right? So they are in charge and take charge. Like, wait a minute, we can't do that all the time, right? So but in terms of the top left is the width window, right? Let's top right, sorry. So then let's, homework need to be done. How can I support you? We don't do the homework for the student, but we do with. Another concept that we talk a lot in terms of restore praxis is when students calling out and be the consequences, keeping our student accountable. A lot of time they don't associate with, what did I do wrong, right? And then here's my consequences. So then they will say, the heck with it. And so they unlikely to collaborate, if you will, or follow through. But if we can take time and talk to our students, explain to them, and student will be more responsive to work with us when we engage them, when we give them a clear with an explanation of why we're doing what we're doing. And I remember I mentioned the word being explicit on our relationship. We have to be explicit on our practice as well, and not just a routine. The routine or status quo, right? I just send you to the principal office because you didn't behave, right? That's just the way I operate in my classroom. But if we clearly say, well, when you do that, when you get your hand and punch your other students, right, things happen, and then that's disrupting the classroom, and that's not an acceptable behavior in this classroom. We need to work on that. So give that a clear explanation, and then with that clear expectation, student will most likely engage. And oh, I understand. I know we're short on time, just sharing with you. My kid's been playing hockey, and I've been volunteered to be in the sin pin, if you will, the penalty box. And then I guarantee you, every time I volunteer in that, they come in, the first thing to, I don't know what I did. I don't know why the referee calling me. Is it check or is it interfering? The 14 and 16-year-old kids will always say, the refs just called wrong on me. I didn't know what I did wrong, right? But if you take time to explain it, it's just that they're mind operation. So we take time to explain and keep them, oh, what, when you hit that, students, right? This is, you interfere in the game, and then now you were sitting for a minute and 30 seconds. Okay, I understand, and they will calm down, right? And so that is the fair process, when we just give them the consequence without explaining. It's hard for them to accept. So we take time to talk to our student in that regard. Another mindset we want to work as we work through is that we talk a compass of shame. This is talk about how the positive will impact our student, the negative, and in general, we just see the negative, and how we tend to shame, like calling our student in front of their classroom and tell them they do wrong. And when we do that, not just the kids, with us being that and being called, hey, you did this wrong. We have that kind of shameful humiliation mindset. And then when we do that, we tend to avoid things, right? We don't approach and working on that because I'm embarrassed because of in that call. So we spend time and talking, go through this process. How's it impacting our student, and what can we be mindful and changing our mindset to instead of calling our student, we work with them on that regard. And when we call, and this is the concept I love, is that are we stigmatizing our students, shaming them on their behavior, or that we thinking about reintegrating that shame? So the stigmatizing is that pushing the offender when they do the bad thing, we call them out and think you're a bad person, right? And then your behavior is bad. That's the kind of things we don't want, the stigmatizing them. For us, in terms of restore practice, what we think is the reintegrative same state. Separate the deed from the doer. So then I'm calling out your behavior. The behavior is not meeting the expectation here. So we need to work on that. You need to go see principal or whatever the consequences that we set. Working with students to set that consequences. But when you are done with that, you come back here and I will work with you, right? And so in our mindset, so that in terms of calling out the behavior and not the person, right? And so that's very important in terms of our mindset. So when you're collectively working on all of this, what we have here is called the restorative practice continuum. And our goal is to be proactive as much as possible, and 80% of our time and our work is talking about being proactive, meaning prevention, working on building that relationship. And then 20% of our time will be on responsive, reacting to the behavior, right? And so we have from anything from informal to formal, and this is continuum. Part of that strategy to work on every day is that using effective statement. So so when an incident happen, you call out on identifying the behavior. You give a reason for why you're calling that behavior, and then you request for an appropriate action consequence for that behavior, right? And so there are a factor of calling out those behavior, saying how is it impacting you, and then a request on getting the corrected behavior so as make it right. And so that is the effective statement. Effective question or restorative question is the work that we do, and then this will be into two conversations. One is to the one who did the student who just did the misbehavior, right? And so we talk to the student, right, in terms of what happened, right? What happened? So allow them time to talk about this is what happened, this is what I say, I just want to play and hit the kids, or know that the kids hit me first and then I hit them. So give a student a chance to talk about what happened. Ask them how did it impacted them, the student, and impacting other, and what you need to do to make things right. So that's the smart, the effective question. On the reverse way, and the other person who's been hurt by this action, you also give them a chance to have the effective questions. You go through the process. You asking, what did you think when you realized that this thing happened to you? How do you think what happened? How did it affect you and others? And what was the hardest thing for you? And what do you think you need to do to make things right? So we give an opportunity for the conversation, effective question for both the one who did the harm and then the one who been harmed, for a conversation, and you work it out, and they come to agreement of what need to do to make things right. Another thing is the small importune conversation is using the effective conversation, but with a small group. When you see things happen at the playground or in a situation you cannot just dismiss, you pull them out and have that small conversation on both to both, and using effective question in that regard. Another work is on the circle. Circle can be used many form in terms of relationship building, soliciting feedback, and then we're addressing harm. And then so there's many way of using circle and not just to prepare harm. An example of circle will be in the morning of the Monday or the first week of school, have a chance to say, if it's a few weeks in, and say, hey, tell me something that is best happening over the weekend. Then give everybody a chance to share. Or soliciting feedback. We noticed that there are 5 of the 20 students who not always completing their homework. So we need to work. I need to get your feedback on how to successfully completing homework. And then we give a chance for everybody to speak. And then in that regard, we're not shaming someone who didn't turn in the homework, but that student didn't turn in the homework will learn from other student or the strategy to completing the homework, right? So we're talking both about issues that need to improve, but also allowing other students to share best practice within the classroom as well. So circle can be used in many forms and for many purposes, but the thing is that you have to have plan and the purpose of those circle. And then the formal is that the responsive, and we want to be as less time as possible. So in this is a long process. It take a lot more time. You had to dedicate staff. So the things escalating into where 2 person hurt, and then you have the dedicated staff to talk to the one who been harmed about, go to the effective question. And then if they want to have a conference, you have to let the parents know or the guardian know, and are they willing to meet up and have a conversation? The same thing for the one who did the harm. Same question on using effective question. And then when they agree, you come together, facilitate that meeting, they come to an agreement. If they don't come to agreement, part of the restore practice is that you have to be, is a volunteering, that you had to really into and then volunteer to participate rather than forcing them. So that's a whole nother conversation. Let me add you just a little bit more on the, this is kind of relating to the multi-tier system, right? Where about 80% of our, 75% of our students say, they'll be okay if we teach in the universal expectation. And then it'll be about 15% of students that will need a reminder. And then there you have that 5% of the students like keep working on that, be repeat person who just do the misbehavior. So we need to address that. Anyway, so collectively this is restore practice. And then we go to detail of that. Just this a little bit more about effective statement is to model communication, elevate the emotion associated with that. You build empathy and perspective in taking and talking, and then teach students to self-advocate. This is the framework, right? We need to call out the behavior. We need to associate our emotion and how it's impacting us, and then why it is that way. And then we ask for a corrective, and that there's something that the student come up with instead of us telling student what to do. But of course, we kind of share and give help when they need to. Effective question. So this is to the student who's did the harm. What happened? What were you thinking at that time? What have you thought about since then? Who has been affected by what you have done? In what way? So be very explicit and be specific. What do you think you need to do to make things right? Right. And I mentioned to you about they never think about this. In this question there, we don't ask why, because that's when they be more defensive. But if we say what happened, give them time to think about it. And this is the set of questions in the reverse for those who've been harmed. What do you think when you realize what happened to you? What impact has the incident had on you and other? What has been the hardest thing for you? And what do you think need to happen to make it right? I already mentioned about circle briefly. You need to clearly state and explain the purpose. It can use for check-in, check-out, community building, problem solving, preparing harm, and formal conference. That is a very quick overview of restore practice. I know I go over time. Questions?
You're doing great. You're not over time at all.
Thank you.
Feel free to come off mute or pop things in the chat. I'm monitoring that.
Hey, just a testimonial over here. So we're doing restorative practices this year, and it has been amazing. The impact that our circles have, our community building circles, our reintegrative circles into conferencing has been awesome. Now, one of the hard things is that all of our systems are set up for punitive consequences. All your policies are set up for punitive consequences. And that's when one of the most difficult things for us to not always go punitive. But the impact it's made so far, and we're trying to keep data on our suspension rates and things like that. And just off the bat, one of the things that we've noticed is, so the amount of repeat offenders has dropped to, we've had one repeat offender this year. So last year, just in my alphabet at this point, I had already had 7 repeat offenders. But it really makes a difference that, those reintegrative circles that we're having with any interaction we're having with the student. So even if it's not a suspension or everything, if we're meeting with the student for whatever reason, we set up, to a reintegrative circle, whether it's the next day or 2 days or whatever, and they get what really comes out of this is buy-in, and they feel a sense of something now, and it makes it, and the students are honest. Like if we catch them with a vape and, it's like, oh, when you ask that last question, like, how are you going to make it better? Right.
How you make it right?
I'm not going to, hey, well, I guess I won't bring it to school, or I'll do it at lunch. Great. That's the honesty that we want and we expect from our students, but it's made it so that they have a connection to us and we have a connection to them. So if nothing else, there's just that almost a sense of responsibility and accountability that, okay, you know what, I'm just not going to do it at school. And we have students that check in with us rather than us checking in with them. So anyways, just restorative practice has been really, really good for us so far.
Thank you.
Could I build on that too? Because I agree with everything you said. And one of the things that I've noticed as we here in Alpine, of course, we're trying that as well, but it's new and it's hard. One of the things I found that's maybe an interesting observation or a challenge really is when a student does something and they automatically think they're getting suspended. It's interesting because sometimes that's what they want. I mean, sometimes that's the easier path for them, just to be home, not to be in school. And when in fact, anecdotally, we had one earlier this year that we kind of gave him the choice and he's like, oh, I just want to be suspended. And we're like, whoa, well, we didn't actually want you to make that choice. But that's been a challenge to overcome. So I think it's a good thing though, to try to get that mindset of, hey, we want you here in school and we're going to do what it takes while you're here. Just a thought that I've had this year.
Thanks, Dan and Nacho, for sharing that. A question that I have, this is not like a setup question. I actually don't know this. Kuhn, if there was a principal on this call that wanted to get more training or learn more about restorative practices and how they could implement it, what would be the best way that they could get some additional help or training in that?
Thank you, Benji. And I was about to, if no question now, that's the last piece I want. Just reach out. I mean, we have that universal at USBE on the training request portal. Request, just complete that form. It's very easy, just telling us your interest and when your staff can be there, and then I'm happy to go out and provide that training. So right now, I am a one-man show. But I do have schedule available and love to go out and share the concept. I think the minimum for us is that we get 10 people or more together. Then our agency allow for that. And so Benji or Amanda, you had that training portal request. link.
Just-
Yeah.
Yeah, I just dropped the link in the chat for everybody. So if you guys need that, it's in the chat or it's in most of my email signatures as well.
Yeah. So, and just for time wise, in terms of, it again is building that culture, right? And building a culture within the building will take your top leaders, director, whoever in charge, kind of really give a sense of support and buy-in. And then you have that staff really go into that training, the nuts and bolts of this, and then we discuss the this, and that's where you can get really into the mindset of all the elements that's necessary to make this impactful. And again, it's not that you sit down and do the circle, but the mindset of how the circle, what's the purpose of getting that. And then we shared earlier, right, building that relationship. When you have that relationship, keeping kids accountable is easier. It's not a solve all problem, but it's much easier for us. And again, the punitive, and I share with you that data where we see increasingly students being referred for incidents. And so what can we do to help reduce that? This is part of the options. So.
Well, and I do want to just jump in because now this is making me nostalgic for my time as a principal in a building as well. But I will say, so Kuhn had brought up earlier that it's not just the relationship with students, but like how teachers relate to each other or how admin relates to teachers and whatnot. And there were times when I know that I had a student that would not engage in this process, or at least not well. But other students appreciated the fact that this was the model, right? And so even though there were times where Kuna said a few, you know, like this isn't like a silver bullet, right? Like kids, as Dan said, there are kids that are like, this is way harder to actually talk about my feelings with this, or like why I responded the way that I did, or what you know, an appropriate way to make amends to this, or that's hard work. And for some kids, it's really hard work. And so that has been my experience, though, is that even when it didn't work for one kid, 5 other kids saw it and went, that this is a better way. And I appreciate like that this is how the school is run. And so it and I've had students come and talk to me about that, on like how like we actually, like I've been in other schools where you do something wrong, you just get suspended, and then you come back and then I just get suspended again for the same thing, and it's dumb. And so I do very much believe in restorative practices. There are different ways and systems that I've seen it implemented, but with those foundational principles. It also just feels better as an admin. Like it doesn't feel fun to be mad at kids either. So it's better for your own blood pressure to do it this way. And so I do appreciate it. Anyone else have anything, any experiences or specific questions about your own situation? This is a time that we don't all get together on calls very often, so this is a time to hear from each other.
Ben, if I may just adding on the training structure here, and it as I'm getting, I can do a 2 hours breakout every other week or something. It doesn't need to be all in one setting at once. And I know staff time is very limited in that regard. So wherever work best for school and building, I'll work with you on that. That's all.
An interesting perspective is we implemented these practices in a detention setting. And, you know, whereas you refer to suspension in a detention setting, it would be room time. And we saw that we dramatically decreased room time with these principles and concepts in place. And so it can work in a lot of different areas, but especially with these types of kids. So it's great.
Thanks, David.
May I ask a question to the group? And I'm not even sure what I want my question to be necessarily, but it sounds to me like this is helping you to keep kids in school and not suspend and those kinds of things. I get a lot of questions from DCFS. I get a lot of questions from school staff asking, well, this kid is in DCFS, so I can't suspend him. And I have to say, why can't you suspend a kid in DCFS? And somewhere along the way, there's been some policy through verbal communication created that you can't suspend kids in foster care. Well, my question is those of you that are using this, is it helping to, I guess maybe the answer is there, but is this helping with your discipline practices so that we are keeping kids in classes and not necessary suspensions? Or, so I know you've already kind of said that, but or are there certain policies within your districts that just say you do this, you get to go home for 2 days, right? Or is this part of a new policy that you're now implementing so that we don't suspend children? If that's making sense, is restorative practices part of policy to prevent suspensions? I think that's what my question is.
Is it part of policy? No. Like,
Okay.
is it part of the actual policy? Are we trying to implement it on that level? No. And that's because that's a bigger district thing. So I think a lot of individual schools are making, so kind of when we talk to legal, because a lot of policy is like, well, this happens, this is the consequence, right? And sometimes they build on each other. Well, we didn't want to be out of compliance with those things, but there's enough wiggle room that we can still be in compliance with the overall policies and still do have restorative practices. Is that our goal, to change that district wide? Yes. And so like on our end, so I'm working with our equity committee to look into how we can implement restorative practices into the actual policies so that we can eliminate a lot of these punitive consequences. Oh, okay, well, you got caught vaping, so you're out 3 days. What good does that do any kid? Like, that's not all of a sudden going to stop them from vaping, you know? So we've had to walk kind of a fine line with that, because the expectation is that there is a suspension or a time away. So if the kid gets caught vaping, we meet with them, we send them home for the day, and we come back the next day, and then we have a reintegrative circle. Is it following policy? Not really, but we can kind of get away with that, with the idea that, hey, we can show that what good is it going to have a kid out 3 days, or if he gets caught vaping a second time, up to 10 days. Like, that doesn't help anything. It doesn't change the reality that this kid's going to go home and vape anyway, you know? So, yeah, policy hasn't changed, unfortunately, and I don't know that it will, but we're working within policy to have restorative practices.
So for me to respond and say, why don't you have a circle of trust, or a reintegrative circle, that's not going to actually like be well known necessarily across your district even, but practice by practice, but suggesting something like restorative practices is a good idea. Okay, this is helpful. Thank you.
And if I could add too, I think that I agree with all that as well. And where I see the restorative things helping, especially, are with things like vaping, you know, things that are maybe considered a little more minor. You know, kid brings a weapon to school, we're kind of bound in certain ways. And I don't know how, you know, at what time or in what level this is, but vaping's a good example for me, because for us, that's one of those things where we know our students, many of them have that problem, and we're trying to work with them. And so for us, the, you know, we have, you know, the in school, and we don't call it in school suspension, we call it in school success. Having that allows kids for many different things, including vaping, different things, respect issues, minor scuffles, things like that. We're keeping them in school in a classroom, but we're not necessarily not doing anything. They are separated for a period of time, for whatever that is. but we're able to do things within that in-school success classroom. And so, yeah, it is. It's hard because I don't know how it would. Policy is so general and broad, but I think especially with our alternative, the YIC, the alternative settings, it's the perfect place to at least start this process and give it a shot. So.
Well, and just a question then, so I remember in Ogden School District where I was principal, we had a pretty wide range of what I was allowed to do, right? So I didn't have a very specific, I mean, you know, for like a fight, for example, it would say anywhere from 1 to 45 days of suspension, right? It was like I had a huge range and flexibility of what I could do. Was that unique to, I mean, I've only been principal in Ogden, so is that unique to our district, or is that the same for all of you? Do you have a pretty wide range of what you can do?
I would say we have a limited range. So like going back to vapes. So our policy, the vapes build on each other. So if you get caught vaping in 6th grade and then your junior year, you get caught twice, that's considered 3 violations. Doesn't matter how far apart they are, it's 3 violations. Again, that's the policy. So first one is, up to 3 days. Second one can be up to 10 days. The third one usually is a referral to the district, and then, their multi-tier disciplinary team decides, right? Which can be up to 45 days. Well, let's be honest, by the time they get to us, they've probably had 4 or 5 violations of vape. So then they come to us and they get another one. What should we do? We should probably, it's your 6th vape violation. I mean, that's a referral. And by policy at that point, it really is a 45-dayer, Do we do that? Nope. But so that's why I say I think we have limited. I mean, what the expectation we do and what we actually do are 2 different things. The expectation is, hey, on a 3rd violation, it's a referral. I can tell you this, and I probably shouldn't because this is being recorded, that no, we don't. No, that's the stupidest thing in the world, and I don't do it. So.
All right, well, thank you everyone for sharing. BJ, Jerry, you came off camera. Did you want to say something, or did you just want to grace us with that beautiful smile? There it is. All right. Okay. Yeah, we appreciate that too.
Special kid, got a tie on.
Okay, thank you, Benji, and thank you, everyone.
This is my uniform. I wear a tie all the time. As like Dan's shaking his head too. Yes.
Well, thank you everyone for joining. Appreciate your participation. Kuhn, thank you for taking the time. And then again, you've got in the chat, Amanda dropped in. If you are seeking some individual training from Kuhn to come to your school, I mean, obviously we know that everybody's site is a little bit unique, has a little bit of nuance to it. So Kuhn can come and teach you those principles, and then problem solve with you or work with you on how exactly that system could look in your place. So you've got the link to go in and do that. And if we don't see you then, hope you're having a wonderful, you had a good Thanksgiving and have a good holiday, and hope your kids are safe and you guys are safe. And so enjoy your time. Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.